Hi guys, I'm going to be going over the 3 value scale class exercises and going through some shading value tips for you. So here's our layout. We are going to be doing 3 separate value scales, one based on pressure, one based on mark making, and one erasing away. Each value scale is made of 1 by 1 squares, and they are 6 across. We are going to be making these scales from lightest to darkest, 1 being the lightest, 6 being the darkest. So starting off with pressure, by applying pressure to our pencil, we can create lighter marks, lighter values, and by pressing harder on the pencil, applying more pressure, we can make darker and darker marks, like so. So you can see by pressing harder and harder, it becomes darker and darker. Some pencils you may use in your class pack or around your home or in class will be harder and softer. So for example, this is a harder pencil, and applying the same pressure, you can see that it's lighter than the softer pencil. So here to start off with our first lightest value at number 2, I am very lightly shading in. You can see that my hand is far back on the pencil, and doing that lightly along with light pressure creates a nice light even value. Then by moving my hand closer to the end of the pencil and applying a little bit more pressure, I am applying the next shade darker. And then I go through the scale square by square, making each one darker and darker. We don't want 2 squares to be exactly the same. We want them to progressively get darker like a gradient. Looking back at your value scale, you may have to go back and add some more shading on top to get that value gradient. So our next scale is going to be using mark making as a way of applying value. So what I mean is by layering pencil on top of each other, we can make it progressively darker and darker. So instead of just using pressure, we can cross-hatch like this, applying a shade on top of another shade, or we can also add a variety of different marks like curves, swirls, other little textural bits, and we can make darker and darker values. So to see this in action, I am applying one value across the whole value scale. This is known as a midtone. A midtone is a middle gray that we apply that we can either subtract from or add from. So in this case, for this mark making example, I am adding on top. So you can see with the base, which is at 2, I then go into 3 and 4, adding on top, and you can see by doing this swirl technique on top, it layers to create a darker shade. So then I go into each square, adding those marks so it's all consistent, and then going through each one, making each darker and darker. I started with swirls, then I went with cross-hatching, which is going back and forth in different directions on top, like so. The third method I would like you to do value scale of is practicing erasing away. So instead of working progressively, adding darker and darker values, we're going to start with a dark base and then erase away so it becomes lighter and lighter. So like the mark making, one in the middle, I started with a base, except this time I started dark. And like how we did with the pressure, we're going to be doing the same technique, but we are going to be erasing away instead. So by applying less pressure, it'll be lighter. By pressing more pressure, it'll be even lighter than that. After you do so, you may have to go back in and add some value on top to fix any mistakes. This is something we're going to be doing a lot in class, adding and subtracting value to create the right tones on the value scale. And here's our finished piece. Your 3 value scales with pressure, mark making, and erasing away as techniques. I would like you guys to work on yours as well over the next few classes as your asynchronous activity, and then pass them in on Google Classroom. Our objective is to start practicing these value scales because we are going to be working from observation and viewing these full values for each drawing we're working on. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm looking forward to seeing your 3 value scales.